Great Pharaoh. The gift of Troy is a fabulous fabric from the land of the five rivers.
Years ago, when we came to Los Angeles, I really believed that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future.
We are back, man. After being rudely interrupted yesterday with some technical issues, man, this is part 2. Right. You know, if you're watching this, you definitely watched part 1. We appreciate it. But we weren't done with the conversation. We were trying to get into the to the thumbnail. Y'all seen the thumbnail? We were trying to get into the head coach candidates, the OC candidates, the different scenarios that the Raiders can get into by the end of the season, and talk about the future and beyond, man. That's what we wanted to talk about. But we were rudely interrupted by the technical issue. But like I said if y'all checked out my little post the other earlier today, we're gonna be back with part 2, and this is part 2. So, man, we appreciate everybody coming through, man. How's it going, Severe? You ready for part 2?
Oh man, I'm ready. Yeah, man. We was just about to get cooking, man. It's like they cooked it. They cut us off right in the middle, man. They cut us right off in the middle, man. We was about to really get into the nitty gritty of things. And the whole comment section, the chat section was going crazy, talking about these possible candidates, and we was really about to get the people what they wanted, man. And like you said, man, Roger Goodell came in and pulled the plug on us, man. So we had to come back for the part 2.
Yeah, man. Hey, man, but we're back at it, and we're gonna get into it, man. So we're not gonna waste any time, man. If you're watching, make sure you wanna make sure that you hit that. You wanna hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, hit that notification bell so the next time we do go live or drop some content, you'll be notified. As well as go over to Severe Raiders channel and subscribe to his channel, man. He's an upcoming Raider content creator. You guys are going to find out when we go live, like, why you guys need to subscribe to this guy. I'm just giving you the heads up, so you might as well do it right now. Go ahead and subscribe to his channel, like his videos, and, follow him all over social media. You can see it right there. You can see his tag is The Severe Raider. The Severe Raider. So on Instagram, I think you're on Twitter. Is it called Twitter? It's called X. X.
X. Whatever you want to call it. Everybody still call it Twitter, but I guess it's called X.
But it's called a tweet. That can you even replace that word with anything? X. It's
I don't know, man. I don't know, man.
Things are changing all around us, man. But we got to keep up. We got to keep up. But yeah, like I said, let's get right into it, man. And what we were talking about before we got cut off was basically if it's worth keeping at this point Antonio Pierce or Champ Kelly. Do you see that happening? And specifically, we started off talking about Antonio Pierce, and he's 2-2 so far as an interim head coach. He started off strong, especially against the Giants. Not a very good team in the Giants, but hey, he treated them like that. The Raiders blew him out. Obviously, he won against the Jets, but then he had some 2 tough losses against some really good teams, but they didn't get blown out. You know what I mean? It wasn't like one of those games where you'd be like, man, yeah, replace this guy. Da, da, da." Yeah, obviously there are some growing pains with him. In my opinion, there's some things that he could, he's a little rough around the edges, maybe managing the game, maybe needs to, be a little bit aggressive in certain spots, especially because knowing who you're going against, like the Chiefs, you don't settle field goals. You go for it on 4th down and 1, when Aiden O'Connell is starting the game the way he did. I just felt like he probably should have went for it. There's certain things like that where certain examples where he should be a little bit more aggressive. So I understand that point, and I feel like he can grow in that. Feel like he's come in. Hey, man, who would expect that he would be a head coach? He didn't expect that. He's a linebacker coach, and obviously there's
Yeah.
people on the staff that probably you could say are more qualified to be the head coach more than Pierce. But he is the head coach as of right now, and I feel like he's doing a pretty solid job. Now, does that mean that he deserves the job or he's going to get the job? Man, who knows, man? There's 4 or 5 games left. But I think there's a chance where they do keep him. And yeah, man. Well, what do you think? Do you think I'm gonna put this up here so the people can see what
Mm.
I'm thinking right now? And it's
Mm.
do you keep Pierce? Is he replaceable, or we've seen
So
enough? We should just at the end of the day we gotta go ahead and fire him. You know what I mean? As an interim coach.
I think the jury's still out on Pierce. So I'm of two minds on this.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, he has not done enough to justify securing the job. But
Mm,
but the other mind I have on this is that if I had to bet money on who was going to be the next Raiders head coach, the money I would bet would be on Antonio Pierce.
mm,
The thing about Antonio Pierce is that each week you would expect the team to get better and better. But each week we've gotten a little worse. We came out
right.
like gangbusters, right? When we beat the Giants. Then we
Right.
had a tougher game against the Jets. And then we had a game against the Miami Dolphins where we were the tryhards. Oh, they didn't get blown out. And you know what I hate about that is like, have you ever been in the car with somebody and they driving wild as hell and they dang near got into 4 accidents and then
Oh
some
yeah.
ran some lights and ran some stop signs and then flew over some pothole, all this stuff. And then you look at them at the end of the ride, you're like, bro, what is you doing? And what is their
Mm,
response? Did you die? Like, nah, I didn't die, but that don't mean you drove well. So
yeah.
we didn't get blown out, right? But that don't mean you did a good job. We just didn't get blown out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I hate when people are, oh, we didn't get blown out. Well, that's not the goal. Is to not get blown out. Herm Edwards, you played to win the game. So we
Right.
lost that game, and then we started out strong against the Chiefs, and we did what we did all of last year. What got the last guy in trouble last year was we got up big, and then we lost at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So thus far, like I said, he hasn't shown enough for me to believe he's a head coach. People like to point to his ability to be a rah rah guy, and hey, you know what? The people like him. But if we wanted a rah rah guy that people like, just hire a mascot as a head coach. Then, like it takes more than that to be a head coach, right? It takes a lot more than that. So, like I said, he hasn't. I know Raider Nation is in love with Antonio Pierce, but I think that's just because he's the diametric opposite of what we just had in just about every way. And they hated that so much that they want to cling on to the next thing, even though that next thing might not be the best thing. So, I think there's a lot he has to prove. He should still go through the interview process, but like I said, if I had to bet money on who would actually be the coach, I would bet money on Antonio Pierce, but I don't think that will be the wisest decision.
See, my thing is that like the what you're describing is his replacement has to be a guy with experience because you're not giving him a chance to actually grow and learn. Because think about it, if you're talking about the Ben Johnsons of the world, you're talking about all these hot names, these coordinators that are coaching these top offenses, or these defensive coordinators that's coaching these top defenses. They've never been head coaches, so obviously there's going to be some type of growing pain. But there, but what comes with them is there's going to be some good and there's going to be some bad. But obviously you want to see some growth, which I agree. You definitely want to see some growth with Pierce. That's why I kind of alluded to by saying that there's 4 or 5 games left. And in those 4 or 5 games, if we see some growth, hey, maybe it's worth it to maybe give it to the guy where the whole locker room is behind him, and you kind of keep that stability in that room. So I think that it's like I said, there's 4 or 5 games left. It's still too soon to say that he doesn't deserve it. But I get you. There's some things where we've seen like in these 2 losses where even in the win against the Jets, like there's times where I'm like, he should have probably did this, or you should probably manage it a little bit better. But that comes with the territory when you're a rookie head coach. Now, it's almost like you're kind of, and we're gonna talk about the head coach candidates in a second, but it's almost like you're kind of leaning towards a head coach that has a big resume, that has that experience, because some of the things that you're kind of getting on them are kind of like that. The only people that I can think of that would probably be equipped or able to handle that responsibility are guys that's been there, done that.
So not necessarily. I mean, I was told a wise, a smart man learns from his mistakes. A truly wise man learns from the mistakes of others, and vice versa. They learn from their successes. So Antonio Pierce has been around football a long time. He's been a head coach at the high school level. He was a defensive coordinator and assistant head coach at the collegiate level. He was a captain on the Super Bowl team. He was a linebackers coach in the NFL. He's been immersed in this game for a long time. So the fact that he still doesn't know how to manage end of game situations is extremely troubling, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you're choosing the woman that you want to be your wife, if she doesn't know how to manage money, if she doesn't know how to handle household, maybe she's never done it, in a marriage before. But you would think like, hey, somebody that's responsible, that's gonna take care of their bills and
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff is stuff you're looking at. So like it's not like it's this is some foreign concept to him. This is something he should be used to. He's been around it. He's been a head coach before. He has head coaching experience. Like I said, even though it's at the high school level, he was assistant head coach at the collegiate level. So he's been around this stuff before. He's been around at the collegiate level. He was on the staff with Herm Edwards and the former coach for the Cincinnati, Marvin Lewis, which are two guys that were longtime head coaches. Like these are people you use as sounding boards. You talk about these type of things, especially when you're assistant
Right.
head coach. So the fact that you still can't manage in the game situations, you're still fumbling with these timeouts, still not great when it comes to when to challenge, when not to challenge. That those are red flags to me. Those are
Mm-hmm.
extreme red flags to me.
I get you. I get you. Yeah, definitely tough crowd, man. Tough crowd for Severe, man. He's tough on Pierce, but we'll see. Like I said, it's 4 or 5 games left. We'll see how it shakes out. And but let's move on to Champ Kelly, GM,
Mm,
current GM of the Raiders, interim GM, whatever you want to call it. But at the
mm,
time, he was the assistant GM to Dave Ziegler. Now, a lot of people in the building, from what I'm hearing, they like Champ Kelly. And the reason why, word on the street, I mean, it's kind of obvious. I mean, the Raiders interviewed Champ Kelly, and then he ended up being, the assistant GM. So if that's the case, then obviously he has a fan in Mark Davis. So do you see Champ Kelly staying on at the very least, and let's stick to the topic. Oh yeah, I forgot. So are we keeping Antonio Pierce? It doesn't sound like we're keeping Antonio Pierce. Is he replaceable, or are you firing him as of right now? As of right now, where you at?
he's repl- he's replaceable. He's
Did you say
replaceable.
replaceable?
I'm not in the keep camp
Yeah.
yet. I'm
Mm-hmm.
leaning. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's replaceable. He's replaceable. I'm not in the keep column for sure. Not in the keep column. I'm leaning toward the fire column. But right now he's in the replaceable column. In the replaceable column. Like we haven't lost to the Broncos in a long time. We've split against the Chargers, for the past several years. There's a chance that not Champ Kelly, that Antonio Pierce can lose to the Broncos and get swept by the Chargers in the same season, something that hasn't happened for quite some time. So, you know, we'll see if those things happen. We'll see what tune the Raider Nation is
Well,
singing
the
after that.
first time they should have won that game if it wasn't for your boy Josh
Yeah.
McDaniels. You know what I mean? But yeah. But let's move on. Okay, so you said you're saying that with Pierce, he's at this point as of right now. But there's 4 or 5 games left, so anything can happen. But as of right now, you're saying that he's replaceable, but you're leaning towards firing because you're kind of not liking some things that you're seeing from him to actually
Yeah,
offer him
yeah, yeah.
that head coaching spot for the Raiders. Now, Champ Kelly, on the other hand, do you think are you keeping Champ Kelly? Is he replaceable, or do you fire him at the end of
I
the
think
season?
Champ Kelly is replaceable. I think Champ Kelly is replaceable as well. But the thing about Champ Kelly is that, the front office aspect of things is so opaque. We still
Mm-hmm.
don't know, what goes on in these draft rooms, what goes on in terms to, these free agent signings, like any of this stuff. Like how much input did he really have? Let Raider Nation tell you it was all Josh McDaniels. Every bad decision was Josh McDaniels, and every potentially good decision was David Ziegler or Champ Kelly. So it's like, we really don't know. But at the end
Right.
of the day, when you talk about people in the building like him, it only matters if one person in the building likes him, and
Mm.
that person is Mark Davis. And if Mark Davis likes him, he will be returning. Champ Kelly, he had some interesting interesting background coming from Chicago. What he did, in like a minor football league level.
Yeah.
He had some scouting. He has a scouting background as well. So I mean, I think there is still some potential to be mined there. Like there's potential to be mined with Antonio Pierce as well. But what it comes down to is, are these guys actually ready to take the reins of these jobs? And I don't know. Champ Kelly, he hasn't shown enough to show me that he's ready to take the reins. But conversely, he really hasn't had the opportunity to show he has that ability as well, because he was, the assistant. Apparently, since Josh McDaniels was running everything, he wasn't the assistant. He was the assistant to the assistant. So, no, he was he was 3 levels removed from decision making.
Man.
That people tell you. So, I mean,
Right.
there's still a lot to prove, and he's at a time of the season where there's not much he can really do, because the trade deadline is passed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what can he really do to really make a name for himself?
Right.
It's not really a lot he can really do right now.
I
So,
mean,
man, I think he's in a
the
tough spot.
biggest move he got was to claim the cornerback that we got. Was it was it Jack
Jack,
Johnson
yeah,
or
Jack, yeah, Jack
yeah,
Jones, Jack.
Jack Jones? Yeah.
Yeah,
Who obviously has a connection with Antonio Pierce, so
yeah,
it was
exactly.
like a match made in heaven. But yeah, man, I'm with you because it's kind of like you don't really. How much did he have to do with any of the moves that the Raiders made when Ziegler and McDaniels was there? Like, where was the input? Like, you don't really know. He's kind of like that wild card. Now, obviously, Mark Davis likes him. People in the building for the Raiders like him. Like he's it's from what I'm hearing, he's respected around the league, but it's still kind of like you don't know. You don't know 100% like what he's gonna do as a GM where he's the decision maker. And to be honest with you,
Exactly.
depending on the coach, preferably I want the GM to handle a lot of the roster decisions, meaning like
Yes.
who we're gonna draft, sign, and
Yeah.
obviously take input from the coaching staff. But I want that hierarchy.
Exactly.
I want the GM, the coach. I don't want the head coach to have too much power, and and we can get into actually. So you're saying that with uh, with Champ Kelly, he's replaceable. Who do you? And that's a whole different. That's a whole different conversation
That's a whole
because who do
different. That's a whole
you?
different can of worms, man.
Yeah, that's a whole different can of
Mhm.
worms. But right now, okay, so you're saying he's replaceable. I kind of agree because we don't really know. You know what I mean? And if there's
Exactly.
someone out there that's more experienced, more successful, who knows how to build, and it's not a lot, to be honest with you. They all either retired in the Hall of Fame or they're signed long term to like. I mean, if you think about like the best GMs in the league, you got to think of the guy out there, Howie Roseman, maybe John
Ty
Snyder.
Roseman is a
Or,
beast.
yeah, he's a monster. He's a
Yeah.
monster. I like John Snyder for
John
the
John John
for,
John Lynch, unfortunately.
John Lynch. You know what I mean? So there's some guys
Mhm.
out there, but they're obviously with their team respectively. So it's gonna be hard to like give them to take them away from that team unless like I don't know. I don't know. Is it possible for owners to actually snatch a GM while they're in contract with another team? Is that even possible? That's
That I, that I don't know. I think it's possible for them to be traded, much like head coaches. I believe. I don't think
but
it's ever been done though. To
it's
be
never
honest with
happened.
you,
I
but
mean, we've seen head
I don't
coaches get
think
traded.
it's
We've seen head
ever
coaches get traded.
been done.
In my lifetime, it was like what John Gruden,
Yeah.
Al
I
Davis, the late
mean,
great Al Davis, and then when he traded him
yeah.
to Tampa Bay for a
I,
couple of first round picks, and then obviously as of recently,
yeah.
last offseason, I think Sean Payton going to Denver. So, but
Yeah.
GMs like that's a whole different
Man.
conversation. Now, if that was possible, now if you're telling me if that's possible, and Mark Davis can actually, depending on what he's going to offer to the GM, hey, I would do it if he
Yeah.
really wants to win,
Oh,
and
I
you
would
can
do it.
get a
I would,
Howie
man.
Roseman,
I would if
a
you get
John
like Howie
Snyder.
Roseman, man.
Whoo,
Come on now. Come
that's
on
a
now.
game
Or
changer, game changer,
man.
game changer, man, game
I
changer.
mean,
But
if you really wanted to do it, you know, what's my man that retired from Baltimore that was great for all those
oh,
years?
are you talking about He's still in the building too, but he kind of took a back seat. He kind of like
Yeah, I think he's
he,
like
but he,
like an advisor or something like that.
man, he built
He
all
played
those
he
Ravens
played
team.
for a while.
Yeah,
Man,
tip of my
nasty
tongue.
teams.
Won't
I can't think
come
of it
out.
now.
Yeah, he
Yeah, I
he
can't
built a
think of
lot
it
of
either.
those great
Yeah.
Ravens team, great defenses from Ravens. Oh man,
Yeah.
now I'm gonna have to look this up. I'm gonna have to look this up. This
Yeah.
is
And
this
man,
got to.
while you look that up, I think another interesting name that just popped to the top of my head. Now, this guy, he's also a mystery, wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a riddle,
Mm-hmm.
because he's never worked for actual NFL team. No, as a matter of fact, he did work for NFL team, I believe. But my man Lewis Riddick, I think I think people love Lewis Riddick. Now we've kind of gone that route before.
Raider
Um,
connection.
Yep, Raider connection. He's always showing love to the Raiders, and he knows his stuff. And he's a very no nonsense type of guy. Always sharp whenever I see him. Always on point. And he's another one of the guys that hey, I give him extra credit because he has CJ Stroud as QB1. So he gets bonus points for that. And I know a lot of Raiders people. When we were looking for a president of football operations. Um,
Not to
a
cut
lot
you
of
off
people
real quick.
wanted him.
Ozzie Newsome. Ozzie Newsome.
Ozzie Newsome. Ozzie
Yep.
Newsome. Bang.
Ozzie Newsome.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ozzie Newsome is, and now maybe it's a situation where Ozzie Newsome maybe not necessarily be the GM. Maybe we keep Champ Kelly, but we throw a whole lot of cash at Ozzie Newsome's way, and he acts as an advisor to a young GM like Champ Kelly. Maybe that's a dynamic that works. If you're not sure what Champ Kelly's head is at, we don't really have anybody be like that. Like Champ Kelly and the head coach, there's football minds in the building because we know Mark isn't really a football guy like that. So if you're looking for a guy that knows the game, has been close to the game, and has had success, I mean, maybe you throw some money at a guy like that. You create a special position for him, and you let him come over and kind of guide and mentor. I know a young black general manager, who will be one of the few black general managers in the league. Maybe that's something that you can kind
Hey,
of
look, best
tell
case.
Ozzie
I'm gonna
Newsome.
say this right now. Best case to me, in my opinion, I think best case scenario. is if AP's the guy, he finished the season strong. We see some improvements that you've been calling for that you want to see from him as a coach,
Yeah,
from the team, which obviously there's been improvement from the team. Like it's night and day, like from how the team was playing under McDaniels to how they're playing with AP. I understand like there's certain things that's rearing their ugly head, not scoring over 20 points.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like we're not going to talk about that right now. Hey, best case scenario is if we keep Antonio Pierce and Champ Kelly at GM, and we it's still we still got to build a team, but you see how like you're going to be setting the foundation. You know the foundation set. We didn't have to really make any too much wholesale changes. I think there are going to be changes with this team because there are going to be some people that they want in the building because now they're the head coach and now they're the GM. So there's going to be some key changes. But I think when you get rid of a GM and a head coach, everything gonna change.
yeah.
Everything gonna
That's
change.
right.
You know what I mean? And that's gonna be a process, and that's gonna be okay. When are the Raiders gonna be a contender? 3-5 years from now? Oh, okay, that's the plan. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like it's just, but we gotta make the right decision at the end of the day. So, and that's why I said it's like 4 or 5 games. Hopefully they are the guys, but if they're not, the guys, who are the head coach? Let's start with head coach. Head coach
Mm.
candidates. If Adrian Peterson is not the guy, let's start there.
So
If he's
Adrian
not the
Peterson is
guy,
not the guy.
no,
Adrian Peterson would be interesting.
yeah, not Adrian Peterson. I keep saying Adrian Peterson for some reason. Antonio Pierce, AP,
Eh,
AP. You know what it
Adrian,
is? It's
Adrian,
AP.
Adrian, Adrian, yeah, Adrian Peterson will whip this team into shape, literally.
That's hell. That's hella funny how I called him Adrian Peterson because Adrian Peterson is also known as AP as well. And who they
Exactly,
call
that's
Antonio
facts.
Pierce, they also call him AP.
AP, yeah.
So, but yeah, if we're gonna replace the head coach, who would you start with? Who's a name that come to mind? Let's start with one. Let's start with one right now. We'll name a few. But let's start with one head coach candidate that you like.
I think the name that jumps to the top of a lot of people's list is Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
He has the Raider connection. We've been playing footsie with Jim Harbaugh since 2014. We had a cup of coffee with them, before we went ahead and hired Josh McDaniels. And that's when we brought in, I believe Ed Dobbs was the GM that we brought in, who was rumored to have a close relationship with Jim Harbaugh and who was in contact with each other saying, hey, you know what, if they get a job somewhere that they would want to work together. So I think that's a name that automatically jumps to mind when it comes to head coaching candidates. But there are some well documented issues with Jim Harbaugh and just he is idiosyncratic. He's a very odd, peculiar person,
Yeah.
and the fact, to say the least, and that kind of stuff could wear on a team. But as I'm sure you're going to point out, he's had a success everywhere he's been. Everywhere he's been, he's won. So I think that is I think that's probably the name. If we made a wish list of head coaches that we can actually get that were free agents, he will probably be at the top of most people's list.
Oh yeah, he definitely is because based off his resume, he's won everywhere he went: San Diego, Stanford, 49ers, uh, Michigan, uh, college, pro, doesn't matter. He's able to go there, turn around whatever program, whatever team. With the Niners, they weren't winning with Michael Singletary. I think he was the head coach before Harbaugh, right? Was it Mike Nolan or
So
Singletary? Like I forgot
I
but
I
either way,
don't
the
remember. I don't
49ers
remember.
weren't winning games. He comes
Yeah,
there, boom, turns them into a contender overnight. Like builds a tough team. And if you notice, Harbaugh coach teams, they're really tough. Which, hey, you know what? What this Raiders team is kind of lacking, especially with McDaniels coaching them, an identity. They don't have an identity. But with Harbaugh, he's proven time and time again he's going to bring an identity. So that's what I like about him. And he's a winner. So hey, the Raiders need to figure it out, man. Mark Davis, he's in Vegas, new market. You got all these opposing fans coming to the games, and the Vegas crowd, the Vegas city of Vegas, obviously they embrace the Raiders, but they don't know what the Raiders are really about. But the Raiders need to show that city what they're about, and how they can do that is winning.
Yeah,
And eventually that's going to happen. And hey, sometimes you got to pay for, and you got to get the right coach in there. And Harbaugh is a guy that should be high on a lot of teams' lists. But with every great positive, there's always going to be some negatives. And with Harbaugh, you kind of mentioned that he's an oddball and he might rub people the wrong way. And a lot of people kind of mention he's not a guy that you could say is going to be the coach for the next 10 years, 15 years, because, like eventually things get old. But the number one thing for me is that if he's going to come to coach the Raiders, you know what he's going to want. And he's going to want
yeah,
that GM control. He's going to want that
yeah,
power. And we've seen that already. We've seen that already, and it does not work.
yeah,
It doesn't work. It doesn't work with the
yeah.
Raiders. I mean, you probably can say it doesn't work in the NFL, maybe. Trying to think of what example. Maybe Bill Belichick might be the best version of
Yeah,
how it could be successful. But even Bill Belichick lately, have you seen him coach the Patriots lately?
yeah, exactly,
They're losing
exactly.
6-0 against teams right now. So, and he's in his 70s. Harbaugh's in his 60s. He's not a young buck, but Harbaugh is
Yeah,
still hungry. And there's
yeah.
there's a lot going for Harbaugh. It's just if we get him, let's have a classic GM coach relationship. I don't want him to have too much power where he can decide who's drafted and who's signed, and it's just like it's too much. It's too much and doesn't work in my opinion
Nah,
about
man,
Harbaugh.
yeah, I agree 100% there. We need to have that normal dynamic between the head coach and the GM. We haven't had it. We thought we were going to get it in this past regime. It turns out that that was smoke and mirrors, and we really didn't have it. It was according to reports, um, that the head coach was pretty much running the show. It was a shadow GM. So that's not what you want with Harbaugh. It never works. Being a head coach in the NFL is an extremely tough job. Being a GM in the NFL is an extremely tough job. And to have somebody try to wear both of those hats, and when you try to wear both those hats, you're going to do one or both of those jobs poorly. So you want to have people that specialize in each one of those.
So real quickly, I'm gonna go and see if we could let's go ahead and list. I'm not sure if you could hear this, Severe. Let me know. And this is Armand St. Brown. He's making a
Mm,
comment about how he had an experience with Harbaugh. And this is when he was recruited coming out of high school. And one of his visits was Michigan, and it was him and his buddy. And I'm gonna let him tell the story. Let's see if I can play the video real quick. Let's see if you can see it. Do you see what's on the screen? You don't see it. Or at least hear this. Let me see if you can hear this. Hold on one second. I don't know why that's in the way. All right. So I'm gonna play it real quick and let me know if you can hear it.
Three officials. I went to Notre Dame official, I took a Michigan official, and I took a USC official. So got on a red eye to Michigan, boom, got to Michigan, became one of my best friends. We get here, Harbaugh wants to bring us into his office. So I'm like, bet. We get into his office. He sits down in the middle. Me and my friend, we sit across from him. And he's just sitting there in the middle with his legs crossed. I swear to God. 2 minutes, not saying anything, just looking around. Bro, me and my homie are like, is he about to say something? Like, I'm thinking he's gonna start the conversation. Like, he wants to recruit us. Like, he wants us to come. He's not saying nothing. Bro, I swear, he's legs crossed like this. Boom, just looking around.
Right.
Like,
Hey, that's Coach Harbaugh.
bro, it was so weird. So my question to you is he really like that? Like, I heard he's just wired different.
He's different for sure. Like he does that on a regular basis. Sometimes it can get a little awkward.
A little is an understatement, boy. It was 2 minutes of silence in me. I'm like, I'm just looking around, looking at Julie. This might not be the school for me. I don't know.
So that's Amon St. Brown. He has a podcast on. Shout out to 33rd Team, and he has a weekly podcast over there. And that was just a short clip of him talking about Jim Harbaugh. So yeah, that's the oddball that you was talking about. Like he's different in that way, but you can't ignore the results. Like you just can't ignore it. Like at the end of the day, like when you're a Raiders team, a fan base where how many, like, can we remember last time we've put consecutive win seasons, gone to the playoffs consecutively, gone to the play, like, just, man, it's just, I think at this point, like, Raider fans, it's tired of losing. So then they're looking at the next best thing right now. And there's a lot of different candidates we can go. And let's move on from Jim Harbaugh. Hey, we know that he's going to be a top candidate. He definitely has options. It's not just the Raiders. You got the Bears. I think that's a real one for him as well, because there's a connection where he actually got drafted in the first round by the Bears, which is interesting. Didn't know he was drafted in the first round, but I know he was a quarterback, obviously former quarterback. But yes, you could see, and Michigan's not too far from Chicago, like Windy City. It kind of I could see that working with him going over there, and then they got a whole bunch of resources, so I could see him going in there and wanting to be the head coach there, and a bunch of other teams probably would want his services. So let's talk about the next guy. Next guy, I think I think he's probably like the number one guy on your list, and that's the offensive coordinator from the Detroit Lions, Ben Johnson. Hey, he let's be honest right now, like, he's doing great things right now with the Detroit Lions. They can run the ball, they've passed the ball. The job that he's done, to me, that's the most impressive part, is him developing or actually turning his career around. Jared Goff, like, he looks like a completely different quarterback under him, and I think that we live in a league where a lot of the owners, when they're looking for coaches, the offensive coordinator or the hot shot, like the hottest OC, usually is the guy that a lot of teams want in today's NFL, because they know that, like, you want someone that's going to be able to develop the quarterback. It's all about the head coach quarterback and relationship. Look at the Bill Belichick's and the Tom Brady's. Look at the Andy Reid's and the Patrick Mahomes. So, and in today's NFL, usually, like, right now, everybody's going for that top OC, head coach, and then you pair him with a young quarterback. Hey, man, I kind of like that. I like that. I don't see it happening for some reason. I don't see it happening just because. Well, I'm not. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that, because right now it's Mark Davis is kind of unpredictable, but he's kind of predictable, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel what
He's
you're saying. I
You see
feel
what
what
I'm
you're saying.
saying? It's like he's predictable in that, like, you could tell, like, he wants the big name. He wants the big
Exactly.
name. But at the same time, it's like he's unpredictable in that, like, you don't know if he's actually gonna make a good decision in getting the right guy in the building. Meaning, like going for a guy that might be might not be like a guy that's he's a first time head coach. Like when Jim Harbaugh's out there, it's hard for me to believe that Mark Davis is not going to try to get him before anybody
Exactly.
else.
Exactly.
You know what I
Exactly.
mean? So that's kind of my
Yeah.
thing with Ben Johnson. And a lot of these other first time head coaches, these coordinators, is like he's going after guys that's former head coaches or former. There's something about them that makes them like a Jim Harbaugh, Josh McDaniels. I think there's a connection with him and Tom Brady, obviously, and he's coached obviously the top offenses with the Patriots and yada yada yada. You can see why Mark Davis was like, all right, I gotta go after him. But
Yeah.
Ben Johnson, I'm not sure. I think if Mark Davis was able to, like, let's say, like, maybe make all right, give the decision to a Champ Kelly to make, or whoever the GM is at that time, whoever they hire as a GM. If it's not Champ Kelly, whoever that GM is, has him, like, actually choose the next head coach for the Raiders, then Ben Johnson I can see happening, because I think a GM's going to look at him and be like, all right, this guy, he could definitely be a guy that he would want to coach or draft players for, because he believes in the coaching talent. But I just don't see Mark Davis for some reason. I just feel like he's going to go after, like, a Jim Harbaugh, in my opinion.
I feel you on that. I think the situation with Ben Johnson is, as you alluded to, Ben Johnson has done a fantastic job in Detroit, resurrecting Jared Goff, who was, former number one overall pick. Went to the Super Bowl. You know, did some great things with the Los Angeles Rams, and then kind of fell out of favor quickly, and was subsequently moved to the Detroit Lions. And it's not
Mhm.
like, and he came into the Detroit Lions. It's not like they have like a load of weapons, right? They drafted Jameson Williams pretty high out of Alabama, but he missed I think his entire rookie year with an injury, or most of the rookie year with injury. Then he missed some of this year with that gambling situation, and then he's also had a case of dropsies. Their best player on offense outside of Goff is the guy we just listened to, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's turned into like one of the top receivers in the league. Then they got Josh Reynolds over there, and then they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs this year. I think one of the things that points to Ben Johnson being a good fit for this job is that if you like Aiden O'Connell, uh, Jared Goff athletically is the closest probably facsimile to Aiden O'Connell that you'll get in the league in terms of guys that really can't move a lot. Um, Aiden O'Connell was
Uh,
probably a little bit of a step down from
ooh.
Jared Goff, but Jared Goff is not known as a guy that can really run. I mean,
Right.
that was one of his knocks. People like when CJ Stroud was coming out of the league, like his player comp was Jared Goff with mobility. And so Jared Goff is not a guy that really moves a lot. He's one of the few quarterbacks in the league that really can't move. And Ben Johnson has done a great job maximizing his arm talent and his accuracy, and cleaned up his decision making, which turned him into a much better quarterback. So the thing about Ben Johnson is that Ben Johnson is going to probably be one of the number one of all the coordinators in the league. He'll probably be the hottest commodity, and he'll have his choice of where he wants to go. And seeing, you know, whether you agree with how we handled the previous head coach or not, giving the guy a year and some change and only one full draft class to turn around a team that had drafted poorly for years, and had, several bombs and free agents, and had, with 90 something million in dead money on their books, giving a guy a year and however many games to kind of turn that thing around. It's not going to bode well for coaches coming into their very first job, especially when they're going to move their entire families there, and they're going to be looking for a little bit more security than the Raiders have really given any coach outside of Gruden for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. No, and hey, look, Ben Johnson, like obviously, I think he's probably 1A to 1B. Maybe the number two candidate because obviously the experience that Jim Harbaugh might make him the number one candidate, but for
Yeah,
some people might be 1A to 1B because he's coaching a top offense in Detroit. In Detroit. Hey, let's be honest. Like if you look at like the losing teams, the last 20 plus years, the Raiders, the Browns, and Detroit are all like right next to each other.
yeah,
And he's part of that turnaround with him and that head coach out there
yeah,
for the
Dan Campbell.
Lions. Yeah, Dan Campbell, and you got to give props to him because he's part of that turnaround that he's coaching. Man, like I think they're top five in almost every statistical category for the Lions right now. I think in both rushing the ball and passing the ball, I think they're top five.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's definitely one of the top candidates. Let's move on to some other people on the list. Let's go with this is a guy that you kind of mentioned to me before. I'm gonna have you start talking about him. Is Bobby Slowick, and he's the offensive
Yes, sir.
coordinator for the surprising Houston Texans this year with their rookie quarterback, your guy C.J. Stroud.
Man.
Let the people know, man, about Bobby Slowick, man.
So Bobby Slowick is a guy. So he broke into the league. Actually, he broke into the league as a defensive coach. His dad is a defensive coach. I believe his dad played in the league as well. But he broke into the league as a defensive coach with the Redskins. He was there for a few years. Then he left to be an analyst for PFF. He was at PFF for a few years, and then
Interesting.
He joined Cal Shanahan's staff in San Francisco. Initially as a defensive coach, and then they moved him to an offensive assistant. He was spent a few years as offensive assistant, and then he moved to passing game coordinator. He did that for 2 years, and then when D'Amico Ryans left to go to the Texans, he already had identified and told Slowick, hey, you know what? If I get a head coaching job, you're coming with me
Man.
as my offensive coordinator.
Mm.
And so just put things into perspective. Last year, the Texans were second to last in total offense. They were one of the worst offenses in the league.
Mm.
And in just 1 year, I believe there's the sixth best offensive team in the league right now with
Wow.
the rookie quarterback. So that
Right.
and a defensive minded head coach. So it's not like he's riding the coattails of a offensive minded head coach that is making him look good. This is
Right.
pretty much his doing. Him and
Right.
CJ Stroud, and
He's
so
similar to Ben
he's
Johnson. Similar to Ben Johnson, how he's calling the plays. He's calling the shots on offense. So
exactly exactly
yeah, yeah. I think the number one thing for me, like that pops out, is he's part of that famous coaching tree, that Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. Man, you look at all over the NFL. Man, there's so many different coaches from that coaching tree. From the Sean McVays, from the guy Matt LaFleur out with it's Stefanski. Is it Stefanski from that coaching tree? No, I don't think so. Right? Is he part of that coaching?
it's
I
Stefanski.
know
Is he?
LaFleur.
I know they worked for him. Now they worked with him, I want to say, in Cleveland, right? Did they work with him in Cleveland?
Kyle Shanahan was an OC in Cleveland, but Stefanski, I'm trying to think. Was he? I'm not. Hey, when anybody watching the playback, please leave a comment down below. We obviously gonna find the answer, but hey, just leave a comment and let us know.
Yeah,
This is a little bonus question. Was Stefanski part of the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree? But like guys like LaFleur, guys like
yes,
McVay, Kyle
yes.
Shanahan, obviously Mike McDaniel, you know what I mean? Like the list goes on, and now like Bobby Slowick is part of that tree, and he's part of a Houston Texans team that's surprising everybody around the league. But it helps that you got a top quarterback playing like a top quarterback, a top
Yeah,
draft pick playing like
yeah,
the top draft pick, man. He's playing like a guy that has a tremendous amount of potential right now, man. Like in C.J. Stroud, but part of that has to do with he's putting him in positions to succeed. He's developing
yeah,
him. So Slowick, see, that's another guy. That's another guy. I think even more. I would say that Mark Davis. I don't know why. I don't feel like Mark Davis would go after a Bobby Slowick. I think he would go after a Ben Johnson over a Bobby Slowick, just because like that's
I,
something a football guy would make. He would interview Bobby Slowick, and he would make a football guy, a football
yeah.
GM would make a decision on Bobby Slowick. But would a Mark Davis want a head coach in a Bobby Slowick? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he would make that move. And you guys can see, you guys can understand, like, and let me know in the chat too if y'all agree with me or not. But I just feel like Mark Davis wants that big name. He wants that big name head coach. But yeah, but these are guys that we like, and my guy Severe, he brought to my attention Bobby Slowick from the Houston Texans, and let's kind of move on to the next guy on our list. And this guy has some Raider roots, little Raider roots, you know what I mean? And Frank Smith, OC for the Dolphins, guy's doing his thing right now, but he's kind of, I would say he would be, if you're looking at like first time head coaches, I think he would be third, just because he's obviously coaching. He's offensive coordinator for for Miami Dolphins. Mike McDaniel obviously is coaching that offense. He's calling the plays, but you can't take that. But he has that experience. If he could bring that offense, that Miami Dolphin offense to a team, hey, it's almost like worth the risk. He's a former tight end coach for the Raiders. He's been around the John Grudens. He's been around the Sean Paytons, and now Mike McDaniel. So he has that experience learning under some of these top head offensive coaches. I like a Frank Smith. I like Frank Smith, but once you start thinking about it, while we're talking about it, I'm like, if out of the first time head coaches, I think he would probably be number three on the list, man. Because I like Ben Johnson as number one, but I kind of like Slowick over. Now that I'm thinking about it, and you guys hear Severe talk about like his background, I kind of like Slowick over Frank Smith. But what do you like about Frank Smith as a candidate for head coach?
I, I mean, the thing I like about Frank Smith is that Frank Smith is very good at doing what Josh McDaniels couldn't do, and that is building a culture. If you look at when he was here and he was the head coach for our tight ends. Like that tight end room was a very tight knit room. Those guys, had fun. They were wild. Like people knew. People like would talk about how wild and crazy the tight end room was and how closely, how tight knit of a group those guys were. And I think that was directly attributed to the culture that Frank Smith was building with those guys. He's so thus far been the only guy that has been able to maximize Darren Waller as a player. It seems that as soon as he left, Darren Waller fell off a cliff, right? Like the first year we didn't have Frank Smith, I believe, was the first year that Josh McDaniels came in as head coach, and Darren Waller immediately was not the same guy anymore. And with the Giants, he's not the same guy anymore. So we're not like we can just blame it on Josh McDaniels. It's like Darren Waller's not been the same guy. And so, and just seeing what the guys he's been around, he's been around some good offensive minds, and just having just seeing how Mike McDaniel runs his team. Like Mike McDaniel is similar to Frank Smith in that Mike McDaniel was offense coordinator for the 49ers and he didn't call plays. He worked for a head coach that called plays. Mike McDaniel got his opportunity in Miami and he's proved that hey, I can do this at this level. And I think that Frank Smith, I think if given the opportunity, he could potentially do the same thing. But as you alluded to, I would have him squarely but in the pecking order, he would be third. I would have Ben Johnson number one. Slowick, who's a personal favorite of mine, would be number two, and Frank Smith will be number three. But no, I would not be mad at Frank Smith getting the job.
And I think the number one reason why he's number three, not it's because he's not calling the plays. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's not calling the plays, and it's like, a little bit of like unknown there. Like we don't know what it would look like if he called the plays. So
yeah,
he could be one of those guys where he was just more of a placeholder guy. Like, he was part
yeah,
of making the game plan, but on game days, Mike McDaniel's the guy that's making magic right now. He's the guy that's calling the shots over there. So I think that's probably one of the biggest knocks on him. But hey, I still do like him as a candidate. Now let's start getting into this one is a big one, and this is probably a segue into one of the biggest rumors that happened. It happened, perfectly around the bye week. Like when it's really slow, and obviously everybody's on vacation and enjoying their bye
yeah,
week. I even took a little break. Hiatus from YouTube. I took a little break, but
yeah,
if y'all were paying attention to social media and the news out there, some people were alluding to if the NFL drops the case against John Gruden, then Mark Davis would have the green light to bring him back as the head
yeah,
coach of the Raiders. Now,
yeah.
for me, that's I don't know how should I you just
I,
man
yeah,
Stop the cap.
I just can't do it, man.
Stop the cap.
I just can't do it with John Gruden just because the number one reason is because look, we've been there, done that, man. He's gonna come back.
yes,
He's gonna want the same power that he had. He's gonna want the same 10-year contract that he wanted. we've we've seen it. We've seen as much as the NFL kind of like, yeah, obviously they did the Raiders wrong by, and like I could see how there was a little bit of like foul play, meaning that like how did this stuff come out right, in the middle of the season, like while they're investigating another owner, and it was weird, you know what I'm saying? And obviously, and John Gruden, he's guilty, he's just as much guilty as anybody else. Obviously he did what he did, he said what he
Right.
said, and that's why he's not a head coach in the
Right.
NFL. That being said,
Yeah.
as a head coach for the Raiders, he wasn't that good to begin with.
Nah.
I mean, he was all right.
He
He
was not.
developed. Yeah, he Derek Carr looked a little bit better under him. Yeah, we won some games, but there was a lot bad than good, I think, with John Gruden. I just think that
Yes.
we're going backwards. If the Raiders are going to
Exactly.
bring back John Gruden a third time, it's just we're going backwards. I understand Mark Davis. You like John Gruden. He's a friend. Hey, he literally had Del Rio fire himself. He couldn't wait to
Exactly.
hire him. He had him announce his own firing at the end of the last game of the season, which is crazy. I'm sure like Del Rio will never forget that. Like that's super
Ever.
disrespectful. You know what I mean? I'm surprised that he even did it, but he was super
Ever.
professional about it. But yeah, man, like
Yeah.
I personally am against it. I don't want it to happen, but these are the rumors that are flying around talking about John Gruden is gonna come back and this, that, and the third. But I think it would be a huge mistake.
Yeah.
There are issues with the Raiders. I just come like look, third down, red zone situations, the play calling wasn't good. You know what I mean? Let's be honest. It wasn't good. Uh Near the end of the season, time and time again, the Raiders team tend to fail. And there was a reason why I think with Bisaccia, the Raiders finished strong was because Bisaccia, I think, listened a little bit more to the players, meaning like he wasn't coaching
Yeah.
them as hard near the end of the season where, he was giving some players a little day off here and there. And hey, and they finished the season strong. So we can't say that that was John Gruden's team at the very end because Bisaccia kind of like he had something to do with that little resurgence where the Raiders went to playoffs in 2021. So but for the most part, a lot of John Gruden coach teams they tend to not finish the season strong, and and the missed draft picks. Do we need to talk about that? Do we need the missed draft picks? It's just that
Yeah, man.
alone. I'm like no, Cleveland
Yes.
Farrell. Much respect, probably solid player, but he had nothing to do with him getting drafted that high. But come on, man.
Yeah.
I just don't want John Gruden to come back as a head coach, as a GM. Just just no. It's a pass for me.
Nah, man. I completely agree. It's like, we had John Gruden the first time. We had some success, and then we traded him away. We brought him back for the second time. We had minimal success, and then we had to let him go. Do we really want
Right.
to bring him back for a third time? Like, like the second movie wasn't all that great. Do we want to make part three? You feel me? It's like,
It
you
gets
feel me?
worse.
Man,
Usually part 2,
I
sometimes a lot of these part 2 movies they'll be they'll probably be better than the original, but part 3 is always the worst
yeah,
worst of the bunch,
man,
you know. But yeah, I
always
get
the
what you're
worst.
saying,
I,
bro.
I
I get
and
what
I
you're
just
saying.
knew. I just knew you was reaching for the hell no on the soundboard. I thought you was gonna hit us with the hell no
I
to
got
the no.
I
I
got to
knew
change
that
it
was
up, but
coming.
I got you.
Hell no to the no, no, no. Hell to the no. Hell to the no.
Man,
Man.
it's like,
Yeah.
and much like you alluded to, and the problem with Gruden is that first of all, personnel wise, right? He's very, very strange in terms of personnel. Just like his draft decisions, free agent decisions, the amount of money that we like the contract he gave King and Drake, and then not to use King and Drake at all throughout the year. He didn't get used till Gruden got fired, and then you know, like just everything, just everything about the Gruden thing. It just did not go well. He didn't get along well with Reggie McKenzie. Then he brought in Mike Mayock basically to be a glorified scout, and really not, we don't know how much of his input was really, taken into account when it came to these drafts. You already alluded to our red zone was horrible. Now
Horrible.
some of that can be attributed to the previous guy that we had as signal caller, but you're still the head coach, and your play design and your play selection also plays a part in that. Now, and I'm gonna be fair because I always harp on execution. So, execution is part of it. So if your guys aren't executing correctly, then but those guys, if those guys have been years in that system, like at what point, like look, if they're still not executing after years, like dude, that's on you. Right? That's on you
Yeah,
as the head coach. And
as a
kind of like
play
you
caller.
talked about, yeah, as a play caller, and kind of like you talked about, like John Gruden had that Pat Riley effect, and we hear a little bit about it with Josh McDaniels, whereas they're grinding these guys too hard in practice,
Mm-hmm.
and then when it comes to the end of games and end of seasons, these guys aren't as fresh as they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And as you alluded to, like the players talked about, one of the keys to them finishing so strong under Basaccia was that the players told him, like, you know what, these practices, this practice schedule was grueling, like, can you not be so hard on us? And they finished stronger than they ever have before. So I'm going to take a hard pass on Gruden. Then plus the amount of negative attention that will bring to a franchise that is already struggling to put our own fans' seats in the butts in the seats. We would get fans coming just to boo John Gruden, like literally, like outside boycotting and picketing John Gruden, and that's a whole bunch of attention that this team doesn't need, especially if we're going to have a young quarterback, whether it be Aiden O'Connell or a draft pick. Like you don't want them to have to answer questions about their head coach. Like that's not what you want.
And to be honest, I only brought up John Gruden because these rumors were coming out like hot.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
just
yeah,
people were talking about it. So obviously I got to put him up there. We got to talk about it. But
exactly.
the other side of me though, as a Raider fan, you know what I mean, as a fan of the team that's seen everything. There's a little bit of side. There's a side to me where I'm like, I would not be surprised if Mark Davis did this
At
because
all.
it's just like, man, we've just seen all types of like, what are you thinking? Like, why are we doing this? Why did we
Yeah,
hire this guy? Why did
yeah,
we draft this guy? Like that's happened
yeah,
way too many times for me to be surprised that John Gruden comes back a third time. But like I
yeah,
said, it's a hard pass. I agree 100%. I'm sure a lot of Raider Nation agrees, but hey man, I've seen some people out here. I don't know, what they might be smoking, but they're over here talking about Gruden needs to come back and yada. And that's how bad McDaniels was as a head coach. Is
exactly.
people he got people thinking that Gruden would be the answer as a head coach, but it is what it is. But I'll add this, before we go into the another list. If we were to keep AP, what would be the OC options out there that would be a nice upgrade than what we have right now? Much respect to Bo Hargree, but we got to. Hey, if AP's coming back, I think we need to go for another OC other than him, because
Right.
especially if we're going to be drafting a quarterback, which I think we are.
Facts.
But before we get into that, a wild card is, I think, a head coach candidate, a real one. Hey, Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, he's done a great job with that defense with the Cowboys. He has head coach experience. He's been there, done that. He's took his team to the Super Bowl. Obviously, they didn't win it, but what I like about him is he's able to build out his staff with some good coordinators, good assistant coaches, and hey, man, he's doing a good job with that defense. And I think he's going to be able to come, I think, to this team, and let's say for whatever reason, Patrick Graham doesn't come back, we're not too much removed from some of the players that are on this team that fit that defense, that cover three defense that he runs.
Yeah,
For where he was coaching with Seattle and obviously the Falcons. But yeah, man, I think that's kind of a wild card, but it's also kind of a guy that's a second tenured head coach. Do you want to do that again? Do you want to hire a guy that's been a head coach before but it didn't work out? Technically speaking,
yeah,
it kind of faded out at the end where they eventually got rid of him. But I think Dan Quinn would be a nice little option, though. I kind of like him because I think the best thing about him is the fact that he's shown that he has a lot of connections. He has a lot of
yeah,
connections when it comes to like guys around the league, and he's able to build his staff out the right way. And I think with all these head coach candidates, in my opinion, no matter what, I think part of the interview process, part of hiring them has to be who's going to be your OC, who's going to be your DC, how are you going to fill out your staff?
Yeah,
I think that has to be,
yeah,
and that's something that GM, I think a GM would be more qualified to ask.
yeah,
Mark Davis, you shouldn't be interview. You know what I mean? You could be in part of the interview process. You own the team. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is let the football guys, the guys that you admittedly know,
yeah.
you don't know nothing about football, right? So let the guys who
Mm.
are more qualified make the decision. Hey, man, I know you want to win. Just get winners to make winning decisions. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion. But how do you feel about Dan Quinn?
Nah, I totally agree with you. But before you get to Dan Quinn, I just want to say one quick thing, one more quick thing about Gruden. I think
Yeah.
people that are calling for Gruden is like, if you ever had been in a bad relationship and then you break up with a girl, you get into like another even worse relationship, and you like, damn, I kind of miss Tina. Like, let me get
Damn.
back with Tina. Then you get back with Tina, and you're
Damn,
like, oh,
man.
damn, that's why me and Tina didn't work. That's gonna
That's
be Gruden. But
that sounds like
moving on,
therapy to me, man. So some of these fans need
but
some
moving on to
therapy,
Dan
man.
Quinn. Moving on to Dan Quinn, man. Like you said, I think with Dan Quinn, one of the like I don't want to get into this thing where we hold a guy not getting fired in his last job against him, right? Perfect example. We look at what Peterson is doing with the Jaguars. Peterson is a guy that was with the Eagles. He was fired, unfortunately,
Mhm.
and people didn't really want to give him a second chance because of how things ended in Philadelphia, because of how he was fired. And so I don't want to kind of hold that against Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn turned the Falcons into to a contender. As you said, he identified a heck of a staff. He had Cal Shanahan on that staff. He
Mhm.
basically pushed the Tom Brady and the Patriots to the brink in that Super Bowl, and they
Mm.
were kind of a bad decision away from actually winning that Super Bowl. Got a big on those guys. He's come to Dallas Cowboys, has turned that defense into a very opportunistic defense. They're playing pretty much better than they ever have before, and I just think that the guy he just knows what he's doing, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I think a lot of players, I mean not a lot of players, a lot of fans. We keep hiring all these offensive guys, but I think a lot of fans have been calling for us to hire a defensive guy for years, right? And we did it with Jack Del Rio, and we had some success.
Mhm.
Um, so and then we of course, John Madden was a linebackers coach that was elevated. I think that's why a lot of people like Antonio Pierce as well, because it's very similar stories. But I think a lot of
Yeah.
people want or they're wanted a defensive minded guy, and Dan Quinn is a guy that definitely um fits the bill.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Now, so that these are head coach candidates. If for whatever reason the Raiders move on from interim head coach Antonio Pierce, if it doesn't work out with him, obviously, if he doesn't, we end up getting the head coach. So these are guys that we kind of talked about. Some of these guys, like, hey, look, I brought up Gruden. I'm not saying he's a can, but I'm just saying this is what people are talking about. But I had to talk about him. But the Jim Harbaughs, the Ben Johnson, the Bobby Slowicks, the Ben Johnsons, Frank Smith, Dan Quinn. These are all guys where I'm intrigued by. I'm like, okay, there might be something there. If they get if look, even with Jim, like Jim Harbaugh, I think another positive about him is he does a good job of building out his staff. Even
Yeah.
even in college, in the NFL, he's done a good job. So that's one thing I forgot to mention about him. That being said, let's actually look at the other scenario. And the other scenario is if AP is still the head coach. We keep
Mhm.
AP, Champ Kelly's the GM, and you know there are going to be some changes with this team. And we kind of wanted to look at, in our opinion, and I think Severe agrees as well, is that maybe that OC spot needs to be upgraded. And some of the guys that we feel like would be a good option, possibly, we have them listed here. And I think one of the guys could be a guy that was recently fired as a head coach, and Frank Reich, head coach Frank Reich, man. The guy, he coached, he coached Peyton Manning to one of his MVP seasons. Phillip Rivers had one of his best seasons under Frank Wright. Obviously, Andrew Luck had a comeback season under him as an OC. So, and by the way, when he coached Peyton Manning, he was a QB coach. But still, you can see how he has a little bit of an influence on QBs, which is an important position on a football.
Exactly.
And I'm not saying he's a head coach candidate. I'm just saying as an OC, just like McDaniels. I can see McDaniels going back to wherever Belichick it goes, wherever he's going to be coaching next year. If he's going to go back, if Bill Belichick goes back to the Patriots, I can see McDaniels coming back there and he's coaching a good offense. That's what he knows what to do. That's his bread and butter. And some of these guys that I've listed here are former head coaches, but it didn't work out. But I do believe them as an OC because it's less responsibility to be able to focus on one part of the football team. And I think Frank Wright would be a good option. How do you feel about Frank Wright as an OC option for the Raiders?
Yeah, man, I definitely agree with you. Though there are just some people who aren't meant to be head coaches, right? Uh, Josh McDaniels is a guy that immediately comes to mind. Wink Martindale is starting to look like Wink Martindale is kind of in that mode where he's a guy that that's very good coordinator, but may never ever get the opportunity to be a head coach. And some people are just better at at uh at being coordinators. I think Frank Reich he fits that mold. He's a guy that he's still recently been around the league. He's had success in the past developing quarterbacks. Had success in the past developing pocket passers. So if you decide you want to run with a guy like Aiden O'Connell, he's had that experience with these statue quarterbacks that kind of stand back there in the pocket and deliver strikes from clean pockets. So I think he's a guy that I would definitely consider. Frank Reich is that he wasn't a horrible head coach. He just didn't know that. I think but he wasn't terrible. Certainly better than anything we've really had recently. And that fact that he's had that head coaching experience, he can be a guy that can kind of, be a sounding board for a young new head coach in
Mm-hmm.
Antonio Pierce. So I think that the experience that he will bring to the offensive coordinator job, would be invaluable, especially when you consider that, Antonio Pierce has such little experience, being the head guy.
Okay, so that's one of the guys. The next and Frank Wright, I'm not saying he's the number one candidate at the OC spot. I'm just saying, look, at the end of the day, like the Raiders are gonna have to upgrade at that spot. Much respect to Bo Hardgree. I just feel more comfortable if we can get someone more established, and we can go into that draft and we can properly evaluate that position, and then have a coach, have an offensive coordinator that's able to develop and get some production out of that QB spot. And the next guy on the list, to me, he's kind of shown, especially, he has that resume. He's won a couple of Super Bowls as an assistant coach, as an offensive coordinator, and now he's doing a pretty good job with Sam Howell out in the Washington Commanders. Sam Howell right now is like what, second in pass yards, 12th in touchdown, top 15 in completion percentage. They're a top 10 passing offense in the Commanders. And this is a one stat that a lot of Raider fans would like. The Commanders are top 10 in red zone percentage. So, hey, he's a solid play caller. I think, solid would be an understatement. I think you seen how the Kansas City offense looks this year compared to last year, and they literally kind of have a similar offenses. There's not really too much has changed. Like the receivers kind of more the same, not really the strength of the team after
Yeah,
Tyreek Hill left.
yeah.
Obviously,
But
Kelsey
Tyreek
leads that
wasn't
off.
there last year though. Yeah,
That's
Tyreek
what
wasn't there last
That's
year.
what I'm saying. And Bieniemy was there,
Yeah,
and he was able to get
yeah,
and that's who I was talking about. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned his name. Eric Bieniemy, I think, is a good option at OC. He does come with some flags, you know, some like I said, there's always going to be positives, there's always going to be negatives. And with Bieniemy
Yeah.
is his relationship with the players. If you hear some of the stuff that some of these players, former players, even with the Commanders, like during the offseason, like which I thought was weird, but Rivera kind of spoke on it, and it felt like it was almost like, damn, like is why were you as a head coach bringing this up? But maybe he feels threatened by Bieniemy's, being the assistant
Yeah.
coach and being an offensive coordinator. Maybe he sees
Exactly.
his replacement. But he kind of
Exactly.
talked about how some of the players on the team were coming to him complaining about Bieniemy. But that
Mm.
being said, there's been reports I've seen them. I looked into them. Like some of these players are like, if there's a possible chance that Rivera gets fired, and Bieniemy comes up as a possible interim coach, they're like they do not want him to become the interim coach because they dislike him for whatever reason. He rubs some of these players, the new age players, the wrong way because he's kind of like a old school NFL coach. He's 9 year. He was a former NFL veteran, man. 9 year NFL veteran, 23 years of NFL college coaching experience. He was a star running back in Colorado in college. You know what I'm saying? So he has a lot of
Yeah.
experience. So there's a reason why he's kind of where he's at right now as far as success as a coach. Some might even say he should be a head coach candidate, and I can see it too
Yeah.
as well. Like it's kind of disrespectful that I'm kind of even talking to him about as an OC, but the reason why I'm looking at it from that perspective is like if Rivera gets fired, the head coach for the Commanders, everybody else gets fired, right? But
Yeah.
some people are saying that he might be the next. He might be hired as a head coach, but you never know. You never know what happens. But I think once a head coach gets fired, all these assistants also leave as well. And then where does Bieniemy go? Does he go back to Kansas City? Does he find another OC spot? Hey man, an OC spot could be the Raiders. I'm just saying. But how do you feel about Eric Bieniemy as an OC option?
Yeah, man. Much like you said already, the, in all honesty, we should be talking about Eric Bieniemy as a head coach. He should be
Facts.
getting head coach consideration. He should be getting
Facts.
much more head coach consideration than he has been getting. It's kind of a mystery to me. I mean, it's not a total completely mystery to me because we've heard the stories, but just like still, this guy, the numbers speak for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the Kansas City Chiefs, they have taken a step backwards offensively. And I don't think no, like on offense, the main guy they lost was Juju Smith-Schuster, right? I don't think Juju Smith was the difference between what they were doing last year and what they're doing this year. Eric Bieniemy played a big part in that. We've already talked about the success that the Washington Commanders are having with a guy like Sam Howell, who is not exactly a household name when it comes to quarterbacks. Not like you wouldn't if I asked you who were the top five in passing yards in the league. It's like
Mm-hmm.
Sam Howell is not one of the guys that would automatically roll off the tip of your tongue. So the fact that he's doing that, with the Washington Commanders team, that it's not like they have a plethora of weapons at the wide receiver position, right? They have Scary Terry, but outside of Scary Terry, like who was a real threat there as a wide receiver. So, um,
Ooh, outside of scary, I'm gonna have to push back just a little bit, just a little bit. Um, obviously they're not perfect on offense. Sam Howell, we didn't even expect him to be second in the league
yeah,
in pass yards, but I like that. I like that boy, Dotson, wide receiver.
Jahan Dotson.
Yeah, I like him. I like Dotson. Scary Terry,
Yeah,
obviously, you mentioned him. I think I like him.
yes,
I like
yeah,
the running back too, Banks. He's nice.
yeah,
So
yeah,
there's some pieces there. There's some pieces
mm,
there. That being said, they weren't doing what they were doing under the previous offensive coordinator. Bieniemy came in there, and you could see the production there. So I
yeah,
agree 100%. I agree 100%.
yeah. And as you alluded to, that there's some concerns there, but though, even if we were to bring him in, I think the relationship that Antonio Pierce has with the players I think it could be a little bit of a good cop, bad cop dynamic where, it wouldn't completely fracture the locker room where they can kind of play off each other. And I think that relationship right there will work. They're both guys that they're former football players, that they played in the league for a long time. I want to say I think they both played in the Pac-10 if I recall right, where Antonio Pierce played. So uh, Bieniemy was at was it Colorado Pac-10? But Colorado might not have been Pac-10 back then, actually. I can't
Okay.
recall. Can't recall.
Hmm.
But they're both former, like I said, former football players. They came up through the league. They came up through the ranks as coaches, and I just think that will be, I think that their strengths and weaknesses kind of that they can compensate for each other, and I think that could be a dynamic that works very well.
No, facts, facts. Bieniemy, like I said, he does come with some flags a little bit because you see how he rubs the players the wrong way, but at the same time, man, you can't ignore the results. Like
Nah,
you can't ignore it, man. And like a lot of people were
men
kind of
lie,
saying,
women
well,
lie.
yeah, and a lot of people were saying like, well, he wasn't calling plays with Kansas City, but he was part of developing Patrick Mahomes. Patrick
Yeah,
Mahomes won an MVP under him. You know what I mean? The offense looked just as good, if not better, with Bieniemy out there coaching. And how many top offenses was he? And a lot of people were like, oh well, they had Tyreek Hill, they had Kelsey, they had all these players, but he was getting it done. And now he's coaching Sam Howell, and no one expected anything from Sam Howell. And he's
yeah,
number 2 in yards. That's crazy.
right.
You know what I mean? That's crazy.
Yeah,
Second year player, by the way, too. So he's number 2 in
yeah,
yards, pass yards in the league. And like I said, top 12 in touchdowns. And they're like, man, I don't know, man. I think Bieniemy would be like an interesting option at OC if Antonio Pierce stays on as a head coach. But let's move on to the next option on here on this list as an OC is a guy that you mentioned to me. And kind of going back to that Texans coaching staff, man, and Gerard Johnson, the QB coach. Let
yes
the people
sir,
know
yes
about
sir.
him, man.
So Gerard Johnson is a guy. He was in the NFL, but he wasn't in the NFL. He's a guy that he was in training camp for a lot of teams. To the best of my knowledge, I don't recall him ever making it any teams. He was a quarterback. He played quarterback at Texas A&M, if I recall correctly. He was a pretty good college player too. He was a pretty good college player, but he's a guy that he understands that quarterback position. He came up, he had a cup of tea with the San Francisco 49ers, was able to learn a little bit there. I believe he then went with the coach. I believe he was there for a little while, and now he's over in Houston, and he is the quarterback coach for CJ Stroud. And we kind of see, what he's doing there. And I think that he is a name that's not on a lot of people's radars as of yet. But I
Hmm.
think, in the coming, it's like what the Raiders do is that we wait till it's too late and we let these other people like pick off these young coaches and while we're going after like kind of retread guys, right? Like instead of hiring a guy like Nick Sirianni, we go with a John Gruden, or instead of hiring a Mike McDaniel, we hire a Josh McDaniels, right? Instead
Hmm.
of grabbing these young minds, getting them while they're young, we grab these older people that kind of that there's a little bit tainted, and but they're tried and true, and we kind of know more of what we're getting with these guys. And I think,
Hmm.
even though Gerard Johnson hasn't had an opportunity to be a coordinator yet, I think though just seeing the job he's done with CJ Stroud, uh, his work with quarterbacks, his experience in the past, the kind of coaches, the organizations that he's been with, I would trust him, being elevated. Especially, he's had an opportunity to see how it's done. He's had an opportunity to see how it's done from some of the best in the league. He's with I want to say he's with the Vikings as well for a little while. So he's opportunity to see what is done by some of the best play callers in the league. And if he was able to come over here, I think he would add some much needed youth over here, some creativity, and we do need a guy that can develop a quarterback. And the work he's done with CJ Stroud is commendable.
Yeah, man. That one was a good option. I see like you like what's happening with the Texans, And you know, hey, Gerard Johnson is part of the development of C.J. Stroud, who, you know, hey, looks like he's going to be winning that offensive rookie of the year. You could book that right now, and even some people had him in the MVP conversation. That's how well that he's playing at that position, and has the Texans at, like, I think 6-5. They're right in the hunt for that wild card spot. So they're doing big things over there with C.J. Stroud. So I get that. Another guy would be a guy that actually was connected to the Raiders. We didn't get a chance to talk to him, as people were connecting him as a possible head coach candidate, but maybe it might be the other way around. A David Shaw as an offensive coordinator, and you get a guy who has that connection to the Raiders. He coached the Raiders, I believe, as an assistant while his dad was also, I think, the defensive coordinator for the Raiders back in the early or late '90s, early 2000s. He's coached under Jim Harbaugh. Maybe there's a connection there. Possibly, we might see that happen. Who knows? But he's coached under him. He's coached some top offenses in college. He has that experience. I think that's more of an interesting fit as an OC, but I'm not sure if he would take that job, just because he's kind of. Do you think that, like, a David Shaw would think that being an offensive coordinator for the Raiders in the NFL would be a downgrade from, because he was a head coach in Stanford? Do you think he will come back as offense coordinator for the Raiders, or I don't. Do you think
So
that's a possibility?
so the thing with David Shaw is that David Shaw hasn't been like really immersed in like true NFL on the sidelines on a day-to-day basis for a very long time. David Shaw was a he worked with John, well, not John Harbaugh, with Jim Harbaugh for a while. Then he took over the job at Stanford, and he did a very, very good job until these last few years, where they kind of fell off the cliff. And part of that was like in the introduction of NIL, and Stanford just really couldn't compete with what some of the other schools were doing. The issue with David Shaw is that even even 5, 6 years ago, David Shaw was running a very like mundane, like throwback type of system, and that's at the
Pro,
college level.
pro,
When
pro,
like
pro style offense.
he's running, but if you look at so what pro style was back then, you know, is that like what the colleges were doing back then when David Shaw was like 4 or 5 years behind them then is what the NFL was doing now. So if he's going to
Mm,
still bring that same type of offense, like all those RPOs, all that kind of stuff, all those jet sweep, those ghost motions, all that stuff that was being done in college back then is stuff that guys are doing now in the league, and he wasn't doing it when he was in college. So
mm-hmm.
if we were looking for a more spark offensively and more creativity, like if you ever heard David Shaw talk, like he's a very smart guy, very thoughtful guy, very articulate, but he doesn't strike me as the type of guy that's gonna like come out with some exciting stuff. He's gonna
Mm,
be very, very, like very precise and all that stuff, but I don't think it's gonna be anything creative or anything that's going to take the league by storm. And maybe what we need is precise. Maybe we need Bourne, but I think Raider Nation, I think they're looking for more creativity,
yeah.
more of what Sean McVay brought to the Rams, and less of the old guard of football coming in trying to reintroduce what worked years before.
Yeah. No, I get that 100%, because he did run a pro style offense. I remember when Andrew Luck was coming out, and that was one of the big things, that, man, Andrew Luck, with the physical talent that he had, he was coming from a pro style offense from Stanford, obviously. And obviously, David Shaw was offensive coordinator under Jim Harbaugh, and then eventually became the head coach. But yeah, that's a good point. Like, but hey, he's had some time to soak up the college game, see what's going on in college. It's not like he just got fired and he's just gonna do the same thing over and over again. Because that's one of the things that I thought was interesting with Frank Wright, is that he got fired from the Colts, and then right after he got for Colts, he goes,
But
he gets the Panthers job, and it's like,
yeah,
damn, like you didn't even give your some time to like, to let everything sink in and like, see what you did wrong and what you can improve on, and then eventually he
yeah,
gets fired during the season, and I don't think he deserved to get fired in his first year. Like even he should at least like let it play out, but that's a whole different conversation for another day, man. But we kind of got into a lot today, man. We got into the head coach candidates to see if, like, let's say if AP got replaced, and then obviously we got into the OC candidates. The OC candidates. I should have
yes,
changed this right now.
yeah,
But yeah, the OC candidates, and yeah, man, I think we kind of got into some good options. Let us know in the chat. Let us know, like, what are your thoughts on anything that you disagreed with, any guys that you feel like we missed out on or didn't talk about. There's plenty of guys that we didn't get a chance to talk about.
facts,
The Cliff
facts.
Kingsbury, it's a
Yes,
possible option right there. Former head coach for
that's
the
interesting.
Arizona
Yeah,
Cardinals. He kind of runs that type of offense that a lot of these young
yeah,
quarterbacks are playing. He can fit that. You know what I mean? I don't know if the Raiders want to go in that direction,
yeah.
but
He's a QB
that's
coach for Caleb Williams right now. So if you're a team that's drafting Caleb Williams, that's a
mm-hmm.
possibility.
Yeah, but pretty much, yeah. So yeah, man, hey man, we appreciate everybody coming through and watching the show, man. We had to finish off yesterday. This is part 2. This is what we really wanted
Yes,
to get into. We seen the
yeah,
chat. The chat was talking about head coach and head coach this
yeah,
and this.
yeah,
I'm like, man, like we right when we start talking about it, the show just shut down. And it was crazy. But
yeah, man.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
like I said, make sure to leave a comment, like the video, hit the notification bell, man. Any last thoughts, Severe?
Nah, man, like I said, this is gonna be a very, very exciting off season, man. I'm looking forward to the whole interview process, seeing what Mark Davis does. The rumor mill has already started, with David Shaw, with the John Gruden, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff already, man. And you talk about, David Shaw soaking up the college game. He was in college and still wasn't moist back then. So, see, he was
He said
he was
moist. Oh my
he was
God.
he was so we'll see, man. But it's gonna be an exciting off season. But yeah, man, just make sure you guys leave your comments in the comment section. Rank our options. If you like the guys that we talked about, you have a different ranking. Hey, leave that ranking in the comment section. You have some different guys you want to talk about. Hey, suggest those guys down there. I know a lot of people were talking about David Shaw. Tell them, change my mind. I'm gonna go back and read the comment sections. Change my mind. Change my mind about Antonio Pierce. Like leave your arguments down there and let us know what you guys are thinking.
Yeah, hit the like button. Go over to Severe Raiders channel. Make sure to subscribe. You see his tag right there. You see the Severe Raider. You can find him all over social media. So just type in the Severe Raider to follow him there, and obviously most importantly subscribe to his YouTube channel, Severe Raider. Obviously, if you're on my channel, PharoahNFL, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and hit that like button. But yeah, man. Hey, till next time, man. We'll see you, man. All right, peace.
Great Pharaoh. The gift of Troy is a fabulous fabric from the land of the 5 rivers.
Believe that the greatness of the Raiders would be in its future.
Yo.
win, baby.
Hello? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it.